Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Ashley Hartz. I'm a holistic nutritionist and yoga practitioner, wellness enthusiast, and I'm here today with my good friend and a mentor here from Santa Cruz where we met. But Sean is a licensed acupuncturist. He's also a yoga teacher, and he's now currently practicing up in Washington. So Sean, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're currently doing in your practice?
Perfect. Sounds good. And thank you, Ashley, for having me. I love this kind of stuff. It's good to just have conversations, so it's great. So yeah, I practice acupuncture as both an adult and pediatric acupuncturist up in Kingston, Washington. People are like, where is that? And pretty much it's across the Puget Sound from Seattle, right? So a small town, but it's in an integrative medicine clinic, which is exciting. I'm the only acupuncturist there, but we have naturopathic doctor, nurse practitioner, a few chiropractors, massage therapists. Everyone's all under one roof.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice and creates a lot of continuity of care for patients, which is super fun. So that's what I do on the clinical side of it. And then I'm also a firm believer in education. So I have a website, holistickids.com. That's kids with a Z, just because it's more fun. And there I educate parents about how to take care of their kids from a holistic perspective, ultimately. Yeah.
Wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit more about how you got into the holistic side of practicing both acupuncture, and I know before that you were doing yoga. What drew you to those sciences that really come out of the Far East versus what we learn more here in traditional Western medicine?
Yeah, as they say, the path is never straight and narrow, right? So I actually used to be an environmental biologist for a number of years. So I traveled around the world, saw lots of cool things. Worked a lot with wildlife, but also in different cultural contexts. And so, long story short, I had some folks close to me get pretty sick pretty quick and watched them walk through the conventional medicine model and was not impressed, to say the least, in terms of what options were available to those folks. Then I saw them seek alternative care, and my interest was piqued because they got some relief at least. So the next thing I knew, I was, signing up for yoga teacher training and sort of switching gears that way because I saw the benefit of yoga for my own life, which was awesome. And then from there, I wanted to know more about the body and how things worked because I felt like there was just more information. And the next thing I knew, I was signing up for a 4-year graduate medical degree in Chinese medicine. and I got what I was looking for, a sense of understanding the world from a more complete kind of ecological perspective, more than just understanding the body as a sum of its parts. So
awesome. Yeah. That sounds really great and really kind of hits on the topic of my goal in a lot of this conversation I'm doing online and bringing different practitioners in is really understanding how the body works and then how the body heals. And I think from a perspective of holistic medicine, naturopathic, we understand that the body is healing itself and we're just helping it along. So can you tell us a little bit more about how Chinese medicine's philosophy works and how does it interact with the body and help it heal, thrive, be healthy?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, that's the fundamental tenet of Chinese medicine, or at least one of them. Which is different than the conventional medicine paradigm, right? We believe truly that the body can heal itself. It just needs a little help, So when we apply the Chinese medicine lens to the body versus, say, the naturopathic lens or homeopathic or even functional nutrition, right? What we see is the body from an energetic kind of context, and it's all about balance, right? So everything, more so than the motto of everything in moderation, but everything truly in balance. And so it is Chinese medicine itself about a 3,000 plus year old medical system, and it's a complete medical system. What that means is that most people, at least in the United States, are used to understanding acupuncture. They've at least had some, maybe if they don't understand it, some exposure to it, right? And acupuncture is one discipline underneath the bigger umbrella that is Chinese medicine. What that means is that we have other tools in our toolbox that a conventional medicine doctor may not have, or even a different complementary and alternative medicine practitioner may not have. That could be things like Chinese herbs are a big part of our medical model, different supplements as well. We could talk about things like Qigong, Tai Chi, even yoga, certain forms of yoga as therapeutic, right? Therapeutic movement. Diet and nutrition tends to play a huge part of our scope of practice, but maybe different than when we're talking about food in terms of macronutrients and micronutrients, but more even the temperature or the real nature of a food and how that impacts our bodies, right, from an energetic type of perspective. And then there's additional therapies, one in particular, Tui Na, which is medical massage, cupping, all these other sort of manual therapies too. So it's this huge, massive toolbox. And so we can sort of selectively pick and choose what may help bring a person back into harmony, bring them back into balance. Because ultimately, if they're not in balance in some way, shape, or form, they could have an injury, an illness that often becomes chronic, right? And so we can both treat illnesses, and the beauty is prevent them from ever happening.
Great. And I love that you bring that up, because that's really something that we don't think about as much in the US is prevention. We often look at the model as we have an ailment, a symptom even, we need to stop, break, end that symptom. Versus I see in functional medicine, in Chinese medicine, and all these holistic practices, the symptom sometimes isn't the actual cause. It's very surface layer and you need to go deeper. So what are some of the symptoms that most of the people that are coming into your clinic have, or what are some of the most common ones that you see can really benefit from Chinese medicine that some people may not realize they could get that benefit from you?
Yeah, great question. And that is a good thing. So in the United States, at least, just because that's where I practice, acupuncture and Chinese medicine has gotten a lot of credence for pain. and chronic pain. And it is so relevant of a discussion right now, especially with opiate addiction and overuse of opiate painkillers in the conventional medicine model these days, really hurting people. I mean, there's a latest statistics around this, which is just astounding, which is over 40,000 Americans a year die of opiate overdose. It's outpaced street drugs, right? And those are prescribed medications. So of course, acupuncture can be beneficial for pain, and many people know that. Where I work, we're sort of the jack of all trades to a degree, because we're working within a community, right? And so generically speaking, it's a family medicine practice. The bulk of the patients currently happen to be pain, largely chronic pain, whether that be migraines, neck pain, back pain, sciatica. Those are some of the biggies. However, what I also see a large percentage of is reproductive medicine. So, couples looking to conceive that are having difficulty conceiving, also women with conditions like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, that kind of stuff too, hormonal imbalances. And then another subset, sort of the third tier of the largest sort of part of my practice, is pediatrics. And so that's that area that a lot of folks don't know about. And they immediately think sort of needles in kids. No, it doesn't work. It's like, no. These are very different needles, for one. And also kids are highly responsive to them. And we have all those other tools, like I mentioned, to work with. So even if kids don't dig needles, it's all good. We can still help their bodies heal.
Awesome. And I think it's really interesting when you tap on the kid aspect of it, is that we talked a little bit earlier before our interview just to kind of get together on what to talk about. And I thought it was really interesting that you said you often see adults working on these chronic conditions that have come about because it's been mismanaged or ignored. I think so many people come to see a practitioner for pain after years and years of just dealing with feeling uneasy or a disease or unhappy or even pain, and then it gets to a point where, okay, now I can't do anything anymore, I need help. But what do you see in those adults that you feel would benefit them earlier in their life, whether it's a teenager or a child, that would help prevent that chronic problem that has become so common in the US?
Yeah, it's a really excellent question. In a large part because I do treat so much pain, the one common denominator that I've seen across the board is, two really. One, that in many cases their degree of pain is preventable. And two, there's some sort of link to childhood. Whether that be a traumatic childhood event or whether it be malnutrition, so to speak, in childhood, we have to realize that our culture has a lot of calories, high calorie foods, but low nutrient density, right? And so that creates chronic illness. And so if we can nip those sort of things in the bud, what we find is that preventing chronic inflammatory conditions in childhood has better outcomes for adults later in life. As an example, if we can help a child or a family manage their children's, say, childhood obesity, which is on the rise right now. I mean, over 30% of American children are overweight right now, right? What being overweight in childhood means is that they have a predisposition then later in life to develop certain inflammatory conditions. One, just as an example, being type 2 diabetes, right? Teenagers are developing type 2 diabetes right now. That was unheard of in decades past. What then diabetes sets them up for is other chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease, maybe stroke, heart attacks later in life, that kind of stuff, but also pain, right? So if we can sort of correct some of that earlier in life using our tools that we use that don't have side effects or minimal side effects, if any, then what we find is that there's an increased quality of life and quantity of life later on, right? People can live longer in the absence of pain or disease or discomfort.
Definitely, yeah. And you tapped on a couple of times there the idea of inflammation. And I think slowly we're coming aware in our society. Sometimes it's hard to tell if it's in my bubble of this health world or in the general public, but I think it's more general just by watching TV, seeing commercials, people understand inflammation is bad. Can you explain a little bit more from the lens of Chinese medicine, what is inflammation and how do you work with it by not just cutting it off? Because I see when you take, like you said, opioids, it's not relieving the inflammation, it's just stopping the signal, from my understanding. It's not actually fixing the problem, it's masking it. Can you give us the Chinese medicine lens of what is inflammation and what's their approach to help with that so that you can relieve pain?
Absolutely. So inflammation is rampant, as you say, and there's a number of reasons for that, in particular in the developed world, right? We do view that differently in Chinese medicine. We don't necessarily have a term for inflammation. We do view each person as an individual, right? But so we could have 10 people in front of us with some degree of an inflammatory condition, but we're going to treat them each differently upon how they present, you know, which is neat. What I can say, though, is that the ways that we treat that inflammation in Chinese medicine are multifaceted. A big part of that is just acupuncture itself. What acupuncture has clinically been shown to do is actually calm down inflammation, right? So sort of help flip the switch to reduce things like swelling and pain and our perception of pain also with acupuncture. The other big thing that we find is using certain foods to reduce the inflammatory response, the sort of systemic all body inflammation. When someone's eating foods that are, for example, highly processed, you know, it's going to cause this rampant sort of inflammatory response. We think that is an accumulation of heat in the body, and sometimes what we know as toxic heat. So think of that, right? In the big sort of alternative medicine world, a lot of people talk about detox and that kind of stuff. That's been a concept of Chinese medicine for, I mean, generations upon generations. We just maybe use different terms for it. But an accumulation of toxic heat causes this sort of all over body pain, this discomfort, and other maladies that we may not even associate with pain, like you know, chronic sort of brain fog or fatigue, right, is a real big one. Even digestive complaints, skin disorders, all that kind of stuff is a symptom, as you say, or a branch relative to the root cause of an inflammatory response. So we can use all of our tools, but acupuncture, diet, and nutrition, and then also the manual therapies like cupping can be really good for increasing circulation as well too, to calm down that inflammatory response.
Awesome. So like we said, it comes back to the body naturally has a way to calm inflammation. You're just helping it along because a lot of things that we do in our modern society is blocking that. It's causing the body not to be able to work at its optimal level and do the things that it used to be able to do without issues. Now there's all these kind of obstacles in the way is what I see. And so I want you to tell me a little bit more about the energy and where that plays. Right now, I've been diving into a little bit of quantum physics. I'm working a little bit with doctors that do traditional Chinese medicine mixed with the new bio feedback machines, which is so crazy, and I'll talk about it again soon. But it really tapped into the idea of science is starting to catch up to these theories of Chinese medicine that have been there forever. Can you talk a little bit more about the energy body and how emotions play into that pain? So when someone comes in, you mentioned that a childhood trauma could now be a chronic pain. Some people may think that's crazy, that's woohoo. Where can you bring the science to that?
Yeah, it's a great thing. So what we have to think of is that the human experience is layered, right? And so what we have, you know, the sort of Western mind is used to this notion of there's a physical layer. It's palpable, right? Skin, blood, bones, okay? But then we also have more subtle layers, and that may be a mental sort of experience, an emotional experience, a spiritual experience, or whatever. So what we find is, for example, if there's an emotional trauma, as an example, a history of sexual abuse or childhood abuse or neglect or verbal abuse even, is that leaves an impression, right? It leaves a memory at one of those layers, and it's often sort of one of those subtler layers, a mental layer, an emotional layer. What that does over time, if that's not remedied with, say, for example, psychotherapy, talk therapy, neurofeedback, EFT, emotional freedom technique, something like that to release that charge, it accumulates and has a ripple effect. Eventually, it meets the physical layer and develops as some, in our mind, predictable type of pain pattern that for the patient or the individual might seem totally unrelated to that experience they had 20 years ago, but because it's left an impression at sort of this psycho-emotional layer, it has to get out, right? It has to go somewhere. It can't stay contained. And so it eventually then ripples out into this sort of physical body, or maybe the spiritual body, where they have a disconnect from their life purpose. They feel confused, lost. We see a lot of that lately. People then get depressed, anxious, that sort of stuff too. Now, how we understand that from the scientific kind of perspective is interesting. You know, what they're finding now is using functional MRIs that there are these pathways of electrochemical current that flow along the body. The most interesting thing is that those correspond largely to what the Chinese medicine practitioners have known for thousands of years. They literally line up. And so acupuncture points are areas in particular that are this higher electrochemical charge. And so if we manipulate those points, it has an effect. And those effects, they're still sort of sussing out. But what they are finding is that it may correspond then to certain areas within the brain. Therefore, you may have an increase or decrease in certain neurotransmitters in your body. Say, for example, serotonin, that feel-good neurotransmitter, right? That can affect how your body manages its own pain. But it may also affect then your outlook on the world, right? All that kind of stuff as well too. And also hormones, right? It can affect cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, right? That are released from the adrenal glands. And so what they're documenting now is from this sort of the influence that we have upon these neurochemical pathways, we have this broad spectrum sort of influence on the body, which is why I can manipulate a point on the hand to have an effect somewhere else, seemingly randomly within the body, but it's very predictable from the Chinese medicine perspective. We just use a different lens to understand it. That's all. That's all. I hope that answers that question at least adequately. It's a big topic, you know, but it's a good one.
Totally. And like, you know, we have a short amount of time, but hopefully we'll talk again soon to go deeper into some of these rabbit holes that we could go down. But I think you did it beautifully in saying that, you know, these layers that, you know, the meridians, which is that the channels that the energy's been flowing on. If you've done acupuncture, talked about Chinese medicine, you understand kind of what's going on. But it's so interesting now to see that science in these machines are finding that. Where before, I think Western medicine, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And as I started to study this quantum physics theory, it's like, wow, like even Einstein has been, you know, saying for like years that there's something else going on, but in our human minds, it's really hard to grasp something that we can't tangibly and physically understand. And I think sometimes part of the practice of holistic medicine is just knowing that the body has its reasons. It's doing this. If you can tap into it and ride the wave, it's going to help you become healthier versus trying to understand it first and then fix it. So I think that's really great that it's there. There's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot and lots of people who've had it done, and they can have testimonials. So I think it's really interesting, you know, what we're learning today, just backing up what's been going on for so long.
It's true. And there's a book, it's called Spark in the Machine, I believe. I should have it on my
Yeah.
shelf. I think I might have brought it into work, but check it out. You can Google it. And it's actually a person coming from this sort of medical MD kind of model, but also an LAC, which is a licensed acupuncturist out of the UK. And he's given the history on all of this and the science behind it. It just recently came out, just maybe a couple years ago, if I'm thinking about it correctly, but document some of that if there's any viewers that want to sort of follow down that rabbit hole a little more. Because there is this notion that it is the channels, as you mentioned. Some people may not call them channels, they may call them meridians. People have preferences, of course. But the notion is that that's what creates this holistic view of the body, right? It's the web. And there's another book, The Web That Has No Weaver, right? And it discusses this whole concept of like, that's how we understand that something is whole, it's complete, you know? And we get away from the notion that we're just an isolated symptom.
Exactly. And we have to come at it from different directions. Like you said, there's many tools in the toolbox. Unfortunately, so many people are looking for the magic bullet or the one thing that fixes them. I know I've gone through that whole, it's like, oh, maybe if I go to this practitioner, I'll just fix everything and I'll finally be normal and my body will feel better, my brain will feel better. But I definitely, for me in my own journey and what kind of drew me into this world is that you start to see the overlap of how you physically feel, how you emotionally feel, how you mentally feel. And once you realize it's all connected, you start to kind of relax a little bit, but then also kind of wonder, like, what are these different modalities? And of course, we can't do everything. So what would you recommend if someone's watching and they're dealing with sciatica or back pain, lower back pain? I get so much in my yoga classes when I teach yoga. I even today woke up in the middle of the night, have no idea where it came from, my back hurt, but I know from my practice that it's emotional, it's stress. I didn't physically lift something, but it physically hurts really bad. So I'd be like, oh, I should go see Sean and have him fix it. So if someone has something like that going on, how can they come see you if they're in the area? What are some things that they could do with the Chinese medicine lens at home in their day-to-day for themselves or even for their kids that might have pain?
Right. It's a great question. So one is definitely go see an acupuncturist. If you have pain, they have so much more to offer you than the conventional medicine model, especially for pain that becomes over time chronic, as you say. And Ashley, I too suffer from low back pain. I'm not immune to that. It's like I'm a human being, right? It's like my genetic predisposition has set me up for it, right? And so I get that from time to time as well. So acupuncture, of course, itself would be great. But in terms of what then people can do themselves, there's a number of things. And my approach is that less is more, because less works for most people, right? And so one of the basic premises is move your body, right? We are so used to being a very sedentary culture, right? And what we have to realize is that our bodies are not okay with it. They are not okay with sitting behind a computer at a desk or whatever for 8+ hours a day, or driving long distances, long periods of time. Just simply get up and move your body. And yes, there are definitely better ways to move your body, but knowing that like a simple walk is really great. In particular, if you can get that movement in nature, right? I mean, it's one of the best things. There's sort of a discipline of Japanese understanding. I'll butcher the name. It's like Shinrin-yoku or something like that, which is the healing properties of just simply being in nature. What's fascinating is science is beginning to understand that. And just the concept of going into nature is very therapeutic and can drop pain levels, in part because it drops your stress levels. So for someone, for example, who has a stress-induced emotional component to their pain, go for a hike, please. Go do that, Just the combination of being around the color of nature. The breathing in the essential oils coming from plants is therapeutic, they're finding now. Just being in contact with soil and the microbes in soil helps affect gut, microbiota. The microbiome is a big thing, but also has a huge component of pain management. In addition, just the sort of, movement in the fresh air, all of that, right, has this ripple effect out into the body. So that's like a super simple thing to do. Move your body, move it in nature. It'll help manage pain and prevent pain. The other biggie that I see is food. Just eat real food, right? If your great-great-great-grandmother wouldn't recognize what's on your plate, please don't eat it, right? Just don't, because that's more of a food product. Food products tend to be highly inflammatory, as we talked about. It's like inflammation is a huge part of pain, right? So what we really want folks to doing is just remembering, like, how would your ancestors eat? Go for those types of foods above and beyond anything that's in a box or a bag. you know? And that too, over time at least, will help prevent that pain from returning. You know, and those are just, I mean, it's just some of the basics. Is realize that movement is highly therapeutic. Real foods are as well. And so just those combinations are majorly preventative. But if you happen to have like an acute case of a pain, definitely go to an acupuncturist. They'll teach you some acupressure points, things that you can do at home. They'll give you herbs that you could do that aren't addictive, that don't have the side effects that, you know, opiate medications or muscle relaxers or whatever will as well too. And they'll help heal the root of the condition rather than simply the symptom.
Awesome. I think that's such great advice, especially as a nutritionist. I'm a big fan of diet being really the foundation of everything the body does. And sometimes you'll read or see someone that says, oh, food doesn't matter. And I'm like, did you take biology class? Every ounce of our body is made of food. So it plays a huge role, and I think we've lost sight of that and slowly are coming back around. And like you said, I love you said a little earlier in the conversation about having your kids start with their diet there. Like you said, diabetes is on the rise, not to mention ADD, autism, all of these other conditions that our kids are being bombarded with that I think food isn't the answer, but it's a part of the puzzle. So I know you have some beautiful kids at home, 3 lovely daughters, more on the way. What are some of the things that you've done with your family to help incorporate these healthy foods and make it a normal, everyday part of life? Some people feel like eating healthy, you become the hippie, or you might stand out. There's a real cultural challenge to eating healthy food. What have you done that's been successful for them?
There is. That's great. And what you have to realize is parents define the normal of their children, right? And so if we tell them that it's hard to eat well, if we tell them it's a challenge to be healthy, they will believe that. It shapes their entire worldview, and then they carry that into adulthood, right? But imagine if we told our kids instead, hey, this, you know, kale, bok choy, whatever is awesome. Hey, sauerkraut is amazing. My family is like highly addicted to sauerkraut, all of us. And yes, even my 2-year-old loves sauerkraut, you know. We'll make kombucha, you know, all that kind, right? And they dig it. They're into it because we develop sort of family rituals around some of this as well too. And rituals, I don't mean as like this weird hoo-hoo spiritual thing. It's just more a rhythm. Right? We develop a family rhythm around eating well. And we help our children make the association between, for example, what they're eating and how they feel in their body, right? For example, you know, we have a birthday party to go to later today. I know there's going to be cake there. And it's just like, it is what it is, you know? And children are children, and American children in particular have a love affair with sweets, right? And it's really hard to get away from. What I've noticed, though, in my own kids over time, just by having dialogue with them, having conversations with them, is they may go to that party, yeah, they may have a piece of cake, but you know what? More and more often, they're not eating it all, right? And they'll have a few bites and they'll be like, ooh, you know, it's a little too sweet for me now. Or I know that like I'm gonna get cranky later, so I really don't want to have this, right? So, and that's just like, it's not like brainwashing. It's not anything. It's just simply asking questions. Hey, honey, after you had the cake, how did you feel? You know, how do you feel in your body right now? Oh, I don't actually feel so great. Maybe my belly hurts, or my head kind of hurts a little bit, or, you know, I just feel cranky, you know, that kind of stuff. And that's been hugely powerful and really empowering for my children. My oldest is 8 right now. My middle daughter's 5, and then we have a 2-year-old and another one on the way. I guess we just can't get enough. And so, you know, but they all are beginning, at least in their own ways, sort of at appropriate developmental times, making these associations between what they eat, so what they put in their body, and then how they feel after. The other thing, though, that we've really instilled in our children, and maybe because both my wife and I were environmental biologists, is this love and connection to nature and getting outside. And like, I want my kids dirty. I love it when they have dirt on their hands and they're putting their hands in their mouth. You know, some parents would freak out. It's like, no, that we're inoculating them with all sorts of good stuff, you know? And so for them, they also remark now, because they can articulate it, at least the older two, that they feel more relaxed when we go on a hike. They may whine and they may moan, oh, we're gonna go for a hike or whatever. But you know what? Halfway through, they're like stoked. They're running around grabbing flowers. They're doing this. They're using that sort of free play, imaginative sort of free play, and their bodies are developing in this rhythm with the natural world. And to me, that's great. The third component that we found, I'll just say quickly, is that as parents, sort of this degree of, it's sort of a bit cliche perhaps, but sort of conscious parenting goes a long way. It's just being awake as a parent, you know, and realizing that, as I mentioned, if I've seen clinically that a lot of adults are in some sort of pain, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual pain later in life because there's this connection to childhood, my responsibility in part as a parent is to help guide them through that process, right? So I want to be awake as a parent and there for them and really treat them as an individual rather than just have this sort of collective and habitual response, like raise my kids as I was raised. It's like I want to break some of those barriers down. Not that I had a bad childhood, I didn't, you know, but there's certain things that I know I want to instill in my kids. And so I want to be awake in that and treat my children as an individual and accept them for who they are. You know, as I mentioned, we have 3 kids right now. They're all drastically different. I'm okay with it. We understand their differences according to the 5-element system through Chinese medicine that we can apply to them. They have these sort of, you know, propensities toward this sort of elemental type, a constitution, the Ayurvedic folks would say, right? But we parent them according to that in part. And we hear them for who they are and what their needs are. And so we support them accordingly. So those 3 ways really sort of, you know, the connection to real foods, positive connections to that, exposure to nature and all that it has to offer and all this free play outside, and then just being aware and awake as a parent and being there to support them, understanding that we're using this sort of 5-element system to do that is how we make it happen.
Awesome. Well, this sounds amazing. Like all of those points, just you hit it so squarely on the nose, and then how the 3 really overlap one another. I think awareness being kind of the root of all of that, being aware of what you eat, being aware of how you treat your body and treat nature as well. Not only just going for a hike, but planting a garden or helping plant trees. Like anything we do, we are all part of one holistic earth. So not only is our body as some of its parts, but a greater whole, then our greater whole is part of an even bigger, greater energy and force out there that all is interconnected. So with all this great information, I would love for people to know how they can get in touch with you, what are some of the offerings you have, and what some next steps could be if they want to move forward with their own health in this way.
Yeah, so my wife and I collectively together run holistickids.com, as I mentioned. So that's holistic kids, again, kids with a Z.com. And on there is a great way to just reach us, right? And what we're doing there is providing a lot of, for one, free information, in particular for parents. I mean, what we're really trying to do is empower parents so their kids can thrive. That's what this is all about. And give them information that, you know what, I wish I had 8 years ago when my daughter was first born, you know? It's been a learning curve. We have learned a lot over this past decade. And so we share that, both in the form of sort of blog posts, you know, we've started a podcast as well, too, just a bunch of free resources for people, because I feel like that's always awesome. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I provide for some folks who can't necessarily come and see me in Washington State is distance consults, right? So, and those are all reachable through holistickids.com. You can set up for a consultation, and we can help kind of get your family back on track and your child's health back on track. And then the other big thing that I found is parents are always short on time, right? And they need information in order to be empowered. So what we've started to do is also offer these sort of mini courses, online workshops, so that people can take them, parents can take them from anywhere in the world, and on various topics. One that we have currently is on that 5-element parenting system and how we approach parenting, conscious parenting, that kind of stuff. It's completely revolutionized the way that we raise our kids. And so we want to share that with people. Got another one coming out on how to raise toxic-free kids, sort of the environmental medicine perspective, all the things our kids are exposed to for the first time in human history, and how to help handle that, right, as a parent. And then a big sort of flagship program now that we have, which is a bit longer term, is this Healthy Kids Essentials course. So it's how to use acupressure at home for your kids' ailments, herbal therapy as well too, just simple herbs that you can get you know, in your local grocery store even, or in your spice cabinet, right? And then also this real food part of it that's such a crux and so critical to American family living in particular. So parents get to do that. It's self-paced. They get to learn all on their own, and they can find all of that at holistickids with a Z.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I mean, you have so much information to share. And a little bit as you're talking there, I kind of feel like as much as the parents are learning for their kids, so much of that's going to apply to their own life as well. It's like putting your oxygen mask on first before helping others. So I love that through helping their children, they may also pick up quite a bit of information that's going to benefit their health, their life, their attitude, their emotional energy that will then feed into the children so that the whole environment at home, like you have created, is very aware, very loving, and very open to flourish for both health and longevity. So I'm really excited about that. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me. This is a new experiment, taking these interviews on, but I just love picking your brain for information. Like I said, you've been a mentor for me since I got to Santa Cruz, and even though you're far away now, I know I can still connect and find you. So I'm glad that you're able. The benefits of the technology and the computer age is that we can reach people from far away, and it does open up this global awareness a little more easily. So I'm hoping to share that more and teaching people how the body can heal. So maybe we can talk again soon and tap into some of those other topics that we kind of brushed over, and share some of that with people down the road. How would you like that?
I would love it. That'd be great. And I love this medium as well too, right? Because people can listen to this on the fly. We have to realize it doesn't take rocket science or a lot of all this sort of energetic input and time and all this other stuff that people claim they don't have to reinvent your health. You can do that, and you can heal your body and help your body heal and your family heal from the inside out. And my sort of perspective as a former ecologist is like, if we can affect one individual, one family, it has this ripple effect out into communities and out into the world. And eventually, you know, before long, we've changed the complete paradigm of what we know to be true, of our reality, right? And so it's been a real pleasure, Ashley, and I definitely thank you for your time and would love to be back.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Sean. I'll be posting this onto YouTube and sharing it with you so you can share with your followers. I'll share with mine. Hopefully you'll get some people reaching out for some of those courses. That sounds so awesome. I know I'm going to want to take some of those. And we will talk again soon. And until then, again, my name is Ashley Hartz. I'm with Soul Garden Health, Holistic Nutrition, talking with the amazing Sean from HolisticKidsWithAZ.com. And we will hopefully hear from you all soon. And there'll be more coming up in the later weeks. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.